I'm gonna say a little prayer because I don't usually do this kind of thing. And if you just pray with me just for a moment. God, help me speak words that come from my heart, that help inspire others, and make today a better day. Amen. So, I usually script things, I prepare things. I didn't do that today. This is all sort of off the cuff. It's whatever comes into my head. I do have 3 specific stories that I want to share with you, but I may wind up venturing off into other areas. But it's mostly about how God reveals, I'll say the Creator reveals itself in my life. And it's been most powerful, mostly hindsight in what I've observed. In other words, you go through bad times and you think that it really sucks and you don't want to go through it, but then after the fact you realized how it was a better thing, right? Overall it helped you or it helped others, right? So I realized that life is not all fluffy pillows. It's not all peace and love and happiness. That's what we want, but it doesn't seem to happen that way a lot. So I'll just share a few stories with you. One is when I first met Mary, a story I love to tell, and it goes back to when I was in the Navy. I was about 3 years in the Navy already. I had been stationed in a couple of different places going through schooling and stuff, and then I had to choose my duty station and go to my first ship, which was a submarine that was being built in dry dock in Connecticut. And it was a brand new submarine, the Alabama, and I was part of the initial crew and the inauguration crew of the ship, and it was a lot of hard work. And I particularly chose a harder path to go because I had, from a previous duty station, I could go on a submarine that was already patrolling, already doing its thing, easy, get in there and do my stuff, or I could choose the harder path and do a new construction submarine, which everybody was saying, like, that really sucks, don't go do that. But I went and I chose that path because that's sort of been my life. I choose the harder path because I know that the benefits are going to be so much better in the long run. And I'm sorry, I'm choking up a little bit. I don't know why. So I wind up going to this submarine. I had had a couple of relationships over the years before that. They didn't result in a very positive outcome. And so when I went to this new duty station, I was like, I'm going to dive into my work. Just going to dive, and I did. And I worked long hours. I did have, wanting to meet someone to love and to establish a relationship with and such. But it was a bit of a tough time, I have to say. I mean, I did the bar scene and stuff like that, but mostly I was working. But I started to pray at night for who I wanted to meet. I started to think about what's the personality? What is this person like that I want to spend time with? And I knew there was power in that, but I didn't fully know. You don't know when you're praying. You don't know if or when those prayers are going to be answered or how they're going to be answered, right? I didn't know that. But I did a lot of praying. I had an extra long duty over 3 days, and I was beat. I was just completely spent. And it's a longer story on new construction submarines, but basically you buy the submarine one piece at a time, then you own it, then you got to care for it, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on there in a dirty environment and such. But I came home, I was living in an apartment off base, and I was just beat, and I got in the door, and all I wanted to do was climb into bed. And the phone rings. Just as I walk in the door, the phone rings. It's not cell phones these days, folks. This is the 80s, right? And I answer the phone, and it's a friend who I hadn't spoken with in 2 years, high school friend. And he says, hey, I'm going to be out in Connecticut visiting my brother who's a chef at this summer camp for adults. Come out and visit us, spend some time with us. And I'm like, oh man, I just got off a 36-hour duty. I am beat, and plus it's way out somewhere where I've never, you didn't have Google Maps in those days, right? So I was thinking of all of these reasons and expressing to him all of the reasons why I couldn't do it. And he was like begging me. He was like, come on, man, come on out. Just for a day. You can spend the night. You can sleep in my brother's cabin, right? I'm like, okay. So I made the journey out there. It wound up taking me like 4 hours. It was like all the way in Kent, Connecticut on the edge. I never would have gone there had I known how long it would have taken me to get there. But I get there, and I meet up with my friend, and that evening they have like a barn dance, and you know, music's playing, people are dancing, and I see Mary across the room, and she's like, yeah, doing that thing, and I'm like, I'm going to go ask her to dance. So I go over and I ask her to dance, and she said no. Now, I didn't have a tremendous amount of confidence, I'll say. I was not like a guy who just thought like, oh, everybody wants to dance with me. I was very shy, and I may seem extroverted, but I am quite a private, shy person. So I asked her to dance. She said no. Later on, I learned that she had come out of a relationship and was like, that's it, you know, men haters club kind of thing, right? Like she was like done with guys. And so I didn't get to dance with her, but you know, I built up the courage to ask her again. I went over after a song or two. I saw she was bopping. I was like, she really wants to dance. I'm going to go dance with her. I went and I asked her again, and she said, no. A second time. Now look, I'm not one to like be persistent like that, because then it becomes like you're stalking, right? It can get to be a pretty bad scene. But for some reason, I was driven to ask her a third time. She said yes. We danced, we talked all night, and every weekend after that, I arranged to get out of my duty because I was on what's called port and starboard duty. So I had to be on duty every other day, even on weekends. So when the weekend arrived and Mary wasn't working, I would pay someone to take my duty so that I could go and see her out in Brookline, which was 90 minutes away. And so I would get out from Connecticut to see her, or occasionally she would come out to see me. And then as our relationship grew and how special I knew things were, I eventually arranged to ask her to marry me. And this is only after a few months. And probably some of you who have had long-term relationships are saying, you're asking her to marry you after a few months? I'll tell you, that's how assured I was in my heart that she was somebody special. So I made this really nice dinner, and I'm an honest, upfront kind of guy, so I always want to let somebody know what they're getting into, right? So I got on my knee, and I said, look, I love you, I want to marry you, but I want to share with you that I'm going to be stationed out on the West Coast in Seattle, so you're going to have to leave your job and your family and your friends, and we'll have to move out there. And oh, by the way, I'm going to be out at sea for 3 months at a time, so you'll be on your own for those 3 months. And I did this wonderful sales job in my proposal, which got a no. She said no. I was devastated because I thought love conquers all. And a few months later, I tricked her into saying yes. And we eventually got married, and we just celebrated our 40th. It's been a wonderful journey. It doesn't mean that everything's been rosy, right? We have our bumps, we have our moods, and that just is what happens in life. But ultimately, that one situation was God's hand in my life. Thank you. Thank you, universe. Thank you for that. Thank you for making that happen. Recently, just back in 2024, the beginning of 2024, I had just left a job, so I was unemployed. I had some time. I was pursuing my own business, but at the beginning of 2024, I got a call regarding my father and my mother both winding up in the hospital, and then both of them having to go to rehab. for different reasons. And I have several siblings. They all live in South Florida. My father and mother were in South Florida at the time. Still, my dad still is. And so my dad got transferred from the hospital to rehab, but his phone got stolen, and they had his passcode, so they were able to get in and start doing all sorts of stuff. And we didn't know exactly what was going on at the time, but I knew it was not a good thing that his phone got stolen, and he had his finances and things like that. So long story short, here's where I'm going with this. I was in this position where I could help. I had all of this training in legal areas. I knew about medical things. I'd helped care for Mary's mom over years, where she was in a facility for many years, 13 years actually, in a nursing facility. That's a tough run right there. But I felt like I was like prepared for this moment. I flew down. I helped my mom and dad, who wound up in the same room in the rehab center over a period of several weeks. My dad couldn't hear me. He's deaf, and he has to wear special hearing aids. And because they had stolen his phone, he couldn't activate his hearing aids. And the new phone, we couldn't get that going because we didn't even know what the software was. And it had to be authorized by a doctor. So the settings couldn't even work on the new phone. So it was like this big mess. And I got parachuted right into the middle of it, and I was able to help. I have to say, I had like several deep crying moments because of the amount of stress and the things that were going on, and how much I wanted to help, yet how challenging it was with my father who couldn't hear me, my mother who had dementia. It was really tough. But 3 weeks later, my mom's in a facility that can care for her. My dad is back home. I'm helping him get back into rehab, getting back on his feet, getting his finances squared away, getting his legal things squared away. Oh, man. Did God orchestrate that? Absolutely. Absolutely. I was there. I could help. I could do the right thing. Thank you. Thank you, universe, for putting me in a position where I could help my father and my mother. My mother passed away in January. My father, I talk with him almost every night. So fortunate. So fortunate to have that. I'll share with you my last story. This goes back to 2008. 2008. I was unemployed. I'd been unemployed for since January of that year. Running out of money. Was paying my mortgage and health insurance out of my 401k, which was depleting rapidly. And I was applying for jobs. It was a tough year. I don't know if you remember 2008, but it was a tough year. And I prayed. I did a lot of praying. Did a lot of, trying to keep positive. Attitude of gratitude, right? Keep that up. Keep things positive. In October, which was the last month of our savings, which was going to run out, I got a job with people that I had worked with before in a previous company, in a new startup. And I wound up diving in, full force. Got saved our butts, right? Was able to make the payments, now employed, but I had started a project at the church to do a production of Godspell. And there's a smile on Karen's face over there, who was a participant, and a number of people here were participants in that. But it was a tough sell because I had to sell cabinet on it at the time, and that was a bit of a challenge. Won't go into details other than it was something new and exciting and different for this church to have happen. And eventually it got approved. The funds were approved to buy the licensing so that we could do the play. And I wound up doing all of the production work that related to it. And there were so many magical moments that came about because of that production. Kim, you were involved in that as well. There were so many people here that were involved in that. But here's just a few snippets, because there were so many different coincidences. God's divine providence is what I would refer to it as to things just falling into place. So I started this new job, and all my time was dedicated to that, and yet I had this production that I now had spearheaded and needed to run, and I didn't have time. I remember at one point I was rushing out of work, which had run over late. I had the auditions going on here, and I was just so frazzled. And I was in the car, and I was praying out loud. I was like, God, give me strength to make this happen, to make this work. At that rehearsal, or that audition that night, we had 10 roles to fill. Most of them were male. I think there were like three or four that were female, or maybe 3. And at the audition, out of the 10 roles that we had to fill, we had 10 people show up. There were 10 women that showed up. Guess what? They all got a role in the performance. They all had their own personal things going on, reasons why they auditioned for the roles, reasons why that brought them together for us to do this performance. It was awesome. What motivated me to get that production going was the fact that when I was in high school, my sister Rosella brought in basically a music program into a Catholic school that didn't have a music program. She played guitar, she wrote music, she was very musically inclined. I played drums, my younger sister played piano, and all of a sudden the Annatis were part of the music program at Curley High School in South Florida. And as such, my sister Rosella wanted to put on the production of Godspell. And so she went and talked to the Monsignor of the school, who basically said to her, don't screw this up. We're going to go out on a limb for you, but don't mess this up. And she did not mess it up. We did the auditions. Several people dropped out. I wound up getting a role in the play. As I was a drummer, I was drumming. So it was a play in which my sister Rosella, my sister Renata, and myself all did the music with other people as well, and we also performed in the play. So we're running up and off stage to do our thing. And the play was a big success. We did 3 performances. The school wound up promoting us, having us do little skits here and there at other events. It was wonderful. Attended by people I love. And it really changed my life. I have to say, that changed my life. That divine providence changed my life, and I wanted to do that here. In the last performance of Godspell, to a sold-out house, people standing in the back, all volunteers, my sister Rosella and my aunt from Connecticut attended the last show. And she was thrilled. Divine providence. My sister Rosella was so proud of me. I felt so good. Rosella passed away a couple of years ago. God bless you, Rosella. So, I've had so many things that have happened in my life that have just been so powerful. And at times you don't realize it until after the fact. You're in hindsight. So I don't know if any of this means anything to you. I hope it triggers you to think back at things in your life that like, how could this even have happened? How could have all of these things lined up to be possible? That to me is divine orchestration. That's God in our lives. And we fuel that with positive thoughts, with the attitude of gratitude, with removing those self-thoughts, or knowing that we're not our thoughts, that we are spiritual beings, that we transcend these human meat puppets that we wear right now. At some point we do. But we go on. We are internal, and we are loved unconditionally by God. And that God is whatever you think that God is, but to me, God is this universal energy that's throughout everything. There's no us or them. It's only us and God. And that's what it is. Thank you so much for listening to me today. I appreciate you all.